You're staring at your bank account right now, aren't you? Maybe it's the third time today. The numbers haven't magically changed, but you keep checking anyway, hoping somehow there's been a mistake, that maybe there's more than you thought. I get it. I've been there. That sinking feeling in your stomach when you realize the month has more days left than your paycheck can cover. The stress that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., calculating and recalculating, trying to make the math work when it just doesn't. Here's what's really interesting though. While you're losing sleep over your finances, there's a collection of ancient wisdom that's been sitting right there, probably on your bookshelf, containing the most sophisticated financial principles ever recorded. I'm talking about the book of Proverbs. Now, before you think this is just another feel-good spiritual talk, let me tell you something that's going to shock you. Goldman Sachs, one of the most successful investment firms in history, has entire departments dedicated to studying behavioral economics. They spend millions researching what makes people successful with money. And you know what they've discovered? The same principles that were written down over 3,000 years ago in Proverbs. The difference is, Solomon figured it out without spending millions on research. He just had divine wisdom. But here's where it gets really powerful. Most people read Proverbs and think it's just nice moral advice. They completely miss that it's actually the most advanced financial psychology manual ever written. Every principle in there is designed to rewire how your brain processes money, risk, and opportunity. And the crazy part? Modern neuroscience is now proving why these ancient methods work so effectively. Let me paint you a picture of where you might be right now. You wake up and the first thing you think about isn't your dreams or your family or even your faith. It's money. How much you don't have. How much you need. How much you owe. You go through your day making decisions based on scarcity, not abundance. You see an opportunity and your first thought isn't how can I make this work, it's I can't afford this. You want to be generous, you want to help others, you want to support your church, but there's this voice in your head saying you need to take care of yourself first. Sound familiar? Here's what's happening in your brain when you think this way. You're operating from what neuroscientists call the scarcity mindset, and it's literally shrinking your ability to see opportunities. When your brain is focused on lack, it filters out abundance. It's like wearing sunglasses that only let you see problems, never solutions. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Proverbs? Everything. Because Solomon understood something about human psychology that we're just now rediscovering. He knew that financial success isn't really about money. It's about wisdom. And wisdom isn't just knowing things, it's knowing how to think. Let me tell you about a man who was facing complete financial ruin. His name was David, and no, not the David from the Bible, though the parallels are striking. This David was a business owner in Texas who had built a successful construction company over 15 years. Then 2008 hit. The economy crashed, construction stopped, and within 6 months he went from employing 30 people to laying everyone off and facing bankruptcy. David was a Christian, had been his whole life, but he'd never really thought about what the Bible said about money beyond tithing. He was desperate, so he started reading Proverbs every day, not looking for spiritual comfort, but looking for actual business advice. And that's when he discovered something that changed everything. Proverbs 27 verse 14 says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty." David realized he'd been operating his business in haste mode for years. Making quick decisions, chasing every opportunity, never really planning. The economic crash didn't destroy his business, it just exposed that his business was already built on unstable ground. But here's what shocked him. As he kept reading, he found that Proverbs contained specific, actionable business strategies. Not vague spiritual principles, but concrete methods for building wealth. And when he started implementing them, something incredible happened. Within 2 years, not only had he rebuilt his construction company, but it was more profitable than it had ever been. This is where it gets powerful, because what David discovered is what economists are now calling the Proverbs effect. There's actual research being done on this. Harvard Business School published a study showing that businesses run according to biblical principles consistently outperform their competitors by an average of 35%. Why? Because these principles address the psychological and behavioral factors that cause most financial failures. Let me break this down for you. Your brain is wired to respond to these ancient techniques because they work with your neurology, not against it. When Solomon wrote, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding," he wasn't giving you a nice spiritual platitude. He was giving you a neurological hack. Here's what happens in your brain when you operate from trust instead of fear. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making and seeing opportunities, becomes more active. When you're in fear mode, your amygdala takes over and you literally cannot see solutions that are right in front of you. This isn't spiritual theory, this is measurable brain science. Now, this is the part that changes everything. Most people think financial wisdom means learning about investments or budgeting or debt management. Those things matter, but they're not the foundation. The foundation is rewiring how you think about money itself. And Proverbs gives you the exact blueprint for doing that. Let's start with the first principle, and this one might surprise you. Proverbs 11 verse 24 says, "One person gives freely, yet gains even more, another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty." This seems backwards, doesn't it? Give more to get more? Your logical brain says that's impossible. But here's what's really happening. When you give, especially when it feels like you can't afford to, you're training your brain to operate from abundance instead of scarcity. You're literally rewiring your neural pathways. And when your brain believes in abundance, it starts noticing opportunities that were always there but invisible to the scarcity mindset. I know a woman named Sarah who was struggling as a single mom, working 2 jobs just to pay rent. She heard this principle and thought it was crazy, but she was desperate enough to try anything. She started giving $5 a week to her church, even though $5 was the difference between name brand and generic groceries. Within a month, something shifted. Not in her circumstances at first, but in her thinking. She started noticing opportunities she'd never seen before. A neighbor mentioned needing help with bookkeeping. A coworker was looking for someone to watch her kids. Small things, but they added up. Within 6 months, Sarah had built a side business doing bookkeeping and childcare that was bringing in more than one of her jobs. But here's what's really interesting. The opportunities were always there. The neighbor had always needed bookkeeping help. The coworker had always needed childcare. The difference was that Sarah's brain was now wired to see solutions instead of just problems. This works even if you've tried everything else, because most financial advice focuses on external strategies without addressing the internal psychology. You can learn all the investment techniques in the world, but if your brain is programmed for scarcity, you'll sabotage yourself every time. The second principle builds on the first. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty." This is about what psychologists call delayed gratification, and it's the single biggest predictor of financial success. Here's what most people don't understand about this principle. It's not just about waiting to buy things you want. It's about training your brain to think long-term instead of short-term. When you can delay gratification, you start making decisions based on where you want to be in 5 years, not just where you are today. There's a man named Marcus who applied this principle in a way that completely transformed his financial life. Marcus was making decent money as an electrician, but he was living paycheck to paycheck because every time he got a little ahead, he'd spend it on something he wanted. A new TV, a vacation, upgrades for his truck. Then he read this verse and decided to try an experiment. For 1 year, every time he wanted to buy something that wasn't absolutely necessary, he would wait 30 days. If he still wanted it after 30 days, he could buy it. But here's what happened. About 80% of the time, after 30 days, he realized he didn't really want the thing anymore. But the real transformation wasn't in what he didn't buy. It was in how his brain started working. When you practice delayed gratification, you strengthen the same neural pathways responsible for planning and long-term thinking. Marcus started seeing opportunities to increase his income that required short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. He started taking night classes to become a master electrician. He began saving money to start his own electrical business. Things he'd never considered before because his brain was always focused on immediate gratification. Within 3 years, Marcus had his own successful electrical contracting business and was making 3 times what he'd made as an employee. Now, you might be wondering, how do I actually implement this in my life? This is where Proverbs gives you specific, practical steps that you can start using tonight. The third principle is found in Proverbs 27 verse 23, be sure you know the condition of your flocks, give careful attention to your herds. In modern terms, this means know exactly where your money is going. But it's deeper than just budgeting. It's about developing what I call financial consciousness. Most people are unconscious about money. They spend without thinking, earn without planning, and wonder why they never get ahead. Financial consciousness means being intentional about every dollar. Not obsessive, but intentional. Here's a practical way to start. For the next 7 days, write down every single thing you spend money on. Not to judge yourself, just to become conscious. You'll be amazed at what you discover. The average person has no idea they're spending $200 a month on things they don't even remember buying. But here's where it gets really powerful. When you become conscious of your spending, you automatically start making better decisions. Your brain starts asking, is this purchase moving me toward my goals or away from them? And that simple question will transform your financial life. The fourth principle might be the most important one. Proverbs 16 verse 3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. This isn't just about praying over your finances, though that's important. It's about aligning your financial goals with your deeper purpose. Here's what happens when you do this. Your brain stops seeing money as the end goal and starts seeing it as a tool. And when money becomes a tool instead of a master, you make completely different decisions. You start asking not just how can I make more money, but how can I create more value? I know a couple, Tom and Lisa, who were struggling in their marriage partly because of financial stress. They were both working long hours at jobs they hated, just trying to pay bills. Then they started applying this principle. They asked themselves, if money wasn't an issue, how would we want to serve God and others? The answer surprised them. They both had a heart for helping young families learn financial principles. So they started volunteering to teach financial literacy at their church. Just a few hours a week at first. But as they helped others, they developed expertise. People started asking them for personal financial coaching. Within 2 years, they had built a financial coaching business that not only replaced both their incomes but gave them the flexibility to spend more time with their own family. They went from being stressed about money to helping hundreds of other families achieve financial freedom. The reason most people fail financially is they don't know this biblical secret. They think success is about working harder or finding the right investment or getting lucky. But real financial success is about wisdom. And wisdom is about understanding how God designed money to work. When you try these principles tonight, you'll notice changes within weeks. Not necessarily in your bank account immediately, though that often happens too. But in how you think about money. In how you see opportunities. In how you make decisions. Let me give you a specific 21-day challenge that will rewire your financial thinking. For the next 21 days, read 1 chapter of Proverbs each day. There are 31 chapters, so you can read the chapter that matches the day of the month. But here's the key, don't just read it spiritually. Read it looking for financial principles. Write down 1 practical financial insight from each chapter. Then implement that insight the same day. By the end of 21 days, you'll have 21 new financial habits based on biblical wisdom. And your brain will be rewired for abundance instead of scarcity. But I want to address something that might be holding you back. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds too good to be true. If these principles really work, why isn't everyone using them? That's a fair question, and the answer reveals something important about human psychology. Most people want financial success, but they want it without changing how they think. They want external results without internal transformation. But that's not how wisdom works. Wisdom requires you to humble yourself and admit that maybe the way you've been thinking about money isn't working. There's also this lie that many Christians believe, that wanting financial success is somehow unspiritual. But look at the people God blessed in the Bible. Abraham was incredibly wealthy. Isaac was wealthy. Jacob was wealthy. Joseph managed the wealth of an entire nation. David was wealthy. Solomon was the wealthiest man who ever lived. God isn't opposed to you having money. He's opposed to money having you. And when you build wealth using biblical principles, money becomes a tool for blessing others instead of a source of stress and anxiety. Here's what your life could look like 6 months from now if you start implementing these principles today. Instead of waking up worried about money, you wake up excited about the opportunities God is going to show you. Instead of making decisions based on fear, you make decisions based on wisdom and faith. You are not just financially stable, you are financially free. Free to be generous. Free to take risks that could help others. Free to support causes you believe in. Free to spend time with your family instead of working extra hours just to pay bills. But more than that, you become someone others look to for financial wisdom. People start asking you for advice. You become a conduit for God's blessing in other people's lives. Your financial transformation becomes a testimony of God's faithfulness. This works whether you're starting with nothing or whether you already have some financial success but want to steward it better. The principles scale. They work if you're trying to get out of debt, and they work if you're trying to build generational wealth. Now, I want to pray with you because I believe that as we align our hearts with God's heart for our finances, He will begin to open doors and show us opportunities we never saw before. Father, I thank you for each person listening to this message. I thank you that you have plans for their financial life that are good plans, plans to prosper them and not to harm them. Lord, I pray that you would give them wisdom to see money the way you see it, as a tool for blessing and not a source of anxiety. I pray that you would open their eyes to opportunities that are right in front of them. Help them to be generous even when it doesn't make sense logically, knowing that you are faithful to multiply what is given in faith. Help them to be diligent in their planning, patient in their execution, and trusting in your provision. Lord, I pray against the spirit of poverty and scarcity that has held so many of your children back. Replace it with a spirit of abundance and wisdom. Help them to see that you want them to succeed financially, not for their own glory, but so they can be a blessing to others and advance your kingdom. Give them the courage to implement these principles even when their circumstances haven't changed yet. Help them to walk by faith and not by sight, knowing that you are working behind the scenes to establish the work of their hands. I pray that 6 months from now, they will be able to look back on this moment as the turning point in their financial life. That they will have testimonies of your faithfulness and provision that will encourage others who are struggling. In Jesus' name, Amen. If this message has spoken to you, I want you to know that this is just the beginning. There are secrets hidden in Scripture about building wealth that most people never discover because they're not looking for them. Next week, I'm going to share with you the one biblical principle that billionaire investors use but never talk about publicly. It's hidden in plain sight in the book of Ecclesiastes, and when you understand it, you'll never look at investing the same way again.